Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis. I'm the Director of Development here at CTC Software. And in today's session, we're going to be continuing with the Nexus Ally Admin Learning Series, focusing very heavily on working with some of the essentials behind command rules. Now, of course, as always, these webinars are recorded. So if you want to come back to this in the future, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. And you can certainly subscribe there if you want to be notified when these go live. Of course, those of you who are attending the webinar itself, you'll be notified as soon as the video is published as well. Also, as always, we try to answer questions live throughout the webinar. So if you have questions about today's topic, throw them in the questions window and I try to answer them live. And we also, of course, save a huge QA session for the end for those questions that can't necessarily be answered in line. Without further ado, let's jump right on in and talk about today's topic. So yes, indeed, we are continuing the Nexus Ally Learning Series. We're going to be jumping in today to some of the essentials for commands. Talked about that on the title slide a second ago. So the purpose of these commands typically is to log some information, but also help guide users, especially on some basic, but in sometimes really critical Revit actions. Things like placing views, renaming elements, in-place family use, things like that. So we're going to take a look today at specifically how to configure these rules. We're going to start with some really essential logging, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper and take a look at some messaging. And at the very end, we're going to take a look at how you can review some of this information in a bit more detail, and how you can customize that a little bit beyond what's just available on the portal. And then we're going to build upon that in our next session as we go even more advanced with these command rules. So we're going to look at creating and managing some basic rules. We did this a little bit in the intro session, but we want to dig back into it, reintroduce you to it so you can manage and log information about these everyday Revit actions. We're also going to take a look at exactly how Ally can deliver user guidance and messaging directly in the Revit environment using notifications. We're going to take a look at some of the command rules and kind of look at some key modeling standards and some workflows that you might want to be aware of depending on your discipline, depending on your industry. And then we're going to take a look at some information that we've captured for at least our little sample space here and take a look at analyzing some of this so you can prepare yourself for identifying some common issues and some training opportunities. And then again, how we might go a bit more advanced and tune this up in the next section in our next webinar on this series. So first off, let's talk about defining some essentials here within Ally itself. How do these essentials get put in place? How do these rules get configured, and what does this mean? So we start this adventure in the CTC portal here. So if we go to the CTC homepage, ctcsoftware.com, of course, you can log in using the little person over here. I'm already logged on, so I'm able to just get right to the space, but you'd want to make sure you use your credentials. And you, of course, have access to this if, one, you have Nexus licensing, and two, you are an admin, either an org admin or a standards admin at your company. That's what gives you access to the standards tab here, being an org admin or a standards admin and having, of course, some licensing. So within here, we're going to be talking about some essential rules. Now, last time we introduced you to the creation of a set of rules, and we're going to dig more into sets in our next session. But to create a new set, you just hit the little plus sign here and that'll build a set. Now, when you build a set, the most important thing, at least at first, is to take a look at the scope of the set and give it some kind of a name, of course, but look at the scope of the set. And for this example today, I'm going to be looking at the entire organization and talking about strategies there for some core logging. And then we're going to target ourselves with a user-specific rule set. And I've actually already built both of these because, again, rule sets aren't really the focus today, but organization level and user level is what I'm going to focus on here. So I have one that's actually named out organization-wide rule set, already pre-built. And I have one webinar sample rules here that are targeting a specific user. And if I edit this guy, just so you can see what happens when you do target a user. When I switch to user, you get a little extra control down here and you can choose who specifically this is targeting. And for our example, so that we can practice and we can see how this works, we're going to target ourselves here to make sure that these rules are doing what we expect before we start to target, other team members or projects or get a bit more advanced in some of this configuration. So at the organization level here, by the way, I'm going to recommend you start with nothing but logging. Just log some information. It's a good starting strategy. And within here, or actually, let's go into the webinar sample rules here so we can build something up. When you want to actually add rules, since we're talking about command rule essentials, you're going to go to add rules within your rule set. Any rule set you're working on, you're doing add rules. And these rules apply to whatever the scope of that rule set is set to. So in this case, for this particular one, I'm in the user one that's targeting myself. So all of these rules are going to apply to me, Sean Zerbis, only in this case. So when you want to build a rule over here, you go to the add rule. You see this theme pretty commonly across our portal. Blue plus sign on the site is typically an add of something. In fact, it's always an add of something when you see a plus sign. That's just kind of what plus means, is adding, right? That's kind of the deal. And so in the rules here, the rule target, what we're focusing on in this environment is explicitly command-based rules, which when you're targeting a specific user, that's the only choice you have, is command-based rules. When I'm in these command-based rules, you can go into the criteria and begin to define exactly which Revit command we're talking about and what objects or object categories we're specifically trying to target with that particular command. So for example, if I wanted to, I don't know, stop somebody from mirroring something in my project model, I can choose the mirror command. Or maybe I want to log if somebody is mirroring something in the project, I can use the mirror command. And then over here for the filterable selector, you can either watch the entirety of the mirror command, or you can start to focus on specific categories. Like one of the things that I absolutely hate mirroring is, let's just type in here plumbing. So I'm going to do plumbing fixtures, or plumbing equipment. That would be a good thing here. So plumbing equipment is something I definitely do not want to be mirroring, because that comes in very specific configurations. Plumbing fixtures, plumbing equipment, HVAC equipment, items like that. We don't want to be mirroring those types of things. And so I can take this mirror for plumbing equipment and add this to the list. And there's other things that maybe I don't want to mirror as well. So maybe I add mirror again. If I want to put a bunch of these in here and get real specific, maybe I don't want to mirror, I don't know, CAD content, CAD links. I don't want to be mirroring CAD links, right? They come in the way they come in. Don't be mirroring that. So I can add that specifically to my list. So I'm watching the mirror command in this case for some very specific things. So we're digging in and getting real targeted on the stuff that we care about. If somebody mirrors a wall, you know what? I don't care. If somebody mirrors a column, maybe I don't care. The mirror beam systems, who cares? That's just a layout and it's built how you build it. But when it's something really specific, like an ordered piece of equipment or kitchen equipment or something like that, like those things matter. And they have left-hand and right-hand configurations. Depending on how detailed you want to get, maybe you really want to watch those. So we're just putting into this rule set something here. Now what this does, that we deal with later, but for now, we're just watching for the mirror command targeting plumbing equipment or the mirror command targeting specifically a CAD link. And then after we've added that criteria, we can do something with it. So now that I know what I'm doing with this specifically, I'm going to probably want to give this some kind of a name so I can identify this collection of commands in my rule set over here. So this would be something like mirror of specifically, let's just say it's plumbing equipment. So we'll do PE and CAD. That'll be good enough for me to know what this is. You can give better descriptions here if you want to, but this name right here will be useful in some of the online logs to understand what was happening with this, which specific rule was triggered. Now at this point, when we're creating these rules, this right now, the way that it's set up is logging only. If there is a rule, and if this is active, which it is right now, if this is an active rule, it is going to effectively do some kind of logging of what's going on in this system. So if I just create this right now, mirroring of either plumbing equipment and or CAD componentry will log something, and it will do this log specifically because this rule set is targeting me, for me, whenever I'm in any project right now. So it's just targeting Sean Zerbis, and if Sean Zerbis ends up mirroring a piece of plumbing equipment or it mirrors a CAD link, it's gonna log the fact that Sean Zerbis did the thing. And so I can update this rule set, and that is now active. The rule set as a whole is active, and that rule within the rule set also is active. So let's take a look at some command rules that we have established here that are available for my organization-wide environment, just so that I can do some core logging at this point. I do recommend starting with organization-wide rules in your rule set that are specific to logging information. Maybe you even want to say organization-wide logging, so that you understand that everything that's going to be in this rule set is nothing but logging. And then maybe you have an organization-wide rule set that is specifically targeting messaging, and that just kind of helps keep you organized as to what's what in these different rule sets. You don't have to do that. Of course, you can mix and match, and we're going to dig deeper into some strategies. But for now, I'm just going to name this logging, and I'm going to update this quickly so that it actually is named accordingly. And then I'm going to go to the add rules over here so you can see two things that are actively in place right now. I'm logging somebody modifying dimension types, and I'm logging something about edits. I'm not exactly sure what those are. We're going to come and take a look at this here in a minute because that wasn't specific enough. And so maybe we just look at that. But dimension types first here. So if I click the action and I go into the criteria, again, this is just logging. There's no messaging on this particular one. When I go take a look at the criteria, this is logging anything where the modify type or the modifying the definition of a dimension is triggered. You can actually add a lot more to this if you want to. So if you're like, oh yeah, I don't like when people modify my text types or my dimension types. Maybe you don't want to block or log the entire command. Maybe you do. That's up to you, right? You could do that to not have to pick multiple categories here. But if you did want to target some specific categories like text, right? I can add that to my list, and now I'm logging modification of dimensions or logging the definition of text types in my project, right? So you can just modify these whenever you need to, and that rule now, dimension and text types, because now I'm doing both, I can just update this, and now I'm monitoring that. Maybe I want to add to this list the logging of mirroring overall. I don't care what the category is. I just want to log mirrors. Or let's say I want to log moving of something, moving of anything, any kind of edits, or deleting of anything, right? So we're going to do here in this case log delete. Let's do that one if I could spell. Log delete. And it's going to be a command, a criteria here. I'm going to log the delete command specifically, the entire command, just add that to my list, and I'm going to save it, right? Defining these rules is pretty straightforward. So now I'm logging delete across the entire system. And this is actually logging for everybody in the company because this is a command-based, or this is an organization-wide thing. So anybody in my organization who's using the Nexus product, signed in, right, they're ready to go, as they do delete commands, it's going to log that they did the delete command for any object. Don't care what it is, okay? Not preventing, I'm just logging. Over here in my rules, again, I could add another one. Let's just do one more here. Log move, and that's the entire move command. So commands, criteria, logging move in this case, and it's the entire command again. So I'm going to add that to my list. You might be asking yourself, Sean, why in the world are you doing individual, rules here and then doing an individual command in those rules? And the reason for that is I want to be able to really slice down my logging information. I want to know that it's the move command overall. That's all I have inside of here. If I just had one that was called log and I put everything into it on the portal, it would be a little more difficult to do some slicing and dicing of information. So I like specifically getting really specific here. Specifically getting specific, yeah, that works. So I like to really divide this up, and then I know exactly what's in here. And if I was like, you know what, I don't want to log move anymore, but I do want to log these other things, I could go into this particular rule. I don't have to remove it. I don't have to delete it from my criteria. I can just set this one thing to not be active, and then it's no longer active for right now. A near future update to my portal is actually going to show you in here whether something is active without having to come in, but this active or not active is something you can toggle rule by rule. Maybe I want to turn off all of my logging 100%. Well, I can go to the rule set and I can make it not active so that the whole rule set is no longer doing something at all. My rules are still in there. Technically, the rules are still active, but because the rule set is not active or might not be active, the whole rule set is basically ignored. So you have the ability to very specifically fine tune what you're doing, and the more granular you make your rules and your descriptions, the more refined you can be in your control of specific commands or logs or messages or preventions that you're trying to do. So when we're talking about essentials in commands, the thing that I can recommend is be discrete, make a rule per command or per command collection that you want to track, so you can enable or disable it. You can control messaging on it as a cluster, as a group, and not be bound to having everything all together. It gives you a lot more flexibility, okay? So I'm gonna update this. That would then be triggering stuff inside of my Revit environment, specifically logs. And now, let's kind of go to the next step here. We talked about sort of the essentials of command rules, right? You can define a command rule within a rule set. You specify the command that you're watching. You can specify the category that you're watching, or you can do the entire command. It's up to you. Now, beyond that, you may want to go to the next step, and for certain critical things, especially early on, you may want to implement some kind of messaging to the user when they're interacting with something very specific. And so let's actually do some of that. Now, this I'm going to do very intentionally over in the rule that targets myself. So I'm not messing with everybody else in my company right now because it's not proven that it's going to do exactly what I want it to do. So I'm going to target myself. So these webinar sample rules right here for the user. Let's go take a look at this. Now, I was messing with these rules in our previous webinar, part 1 of this series. Here, I had removed everything except for this one mirror thing right here. So let me do one very specific thing here in my organization-wide logging. I'm going to do one more. Yep, I don't have it here, so I'm going to add in logging of mirror. And the command is going to be mirroring, mirror, the entire command. I'm just logging it, right? So I made a rule for logging of mirror. The criteria is the entire mirror command. And if anybody in my company does a mirror command, it's going to log that they did it, okay? That's what I just modified here in the organization-wide rule. And I want that so I can be aware of when people are doing mirroring of anything. I don't care what it is at this point. In this case, it's anything. But for this specific user, this guy, this Sean Zerbis guy, he's a really bad aggressor at doing some really bad things with mirroring of things he shouldn't be. So for this person, when they're mirroring certain categories of objects here, I want to enable some kind of messaging. I want to let them know that I want them to maybe not do this thing. So in this case, with mirroring of plumbing equipment or CAD objects, if they do this, or let's do something, add to this one just a little bit here. Let's do mirror as well of, do I have it? Yeah, plumbing fixture tags, lighting fixture. We'll do lighting fixture in this case, just real quick here. So if I mirror a lighting fixture, or if I mirror CAD, or if I mirror plumbing equipment, lighting, we'll just do an abbreviation here, LF, lighting fixture. Then what I want it to do is I want it to message that user. And when it shows this message, the message, whatever I type in down here is what's going to be shown to the user. Now, if I say show message and I don't type a message, then it's just going to, the dialogue is going to be very generic when it pops up. And it's just going to say command triggered this. And that's very nondescript. It's not very helpful to the end user. So maybe what you want to do is say something along the lines of mirroring, I can't spell. This is why I don't usually type while I'm talking in the middle of webinars here, because I'm really poor at typing here. So mirroring this category is not advised. Let's see, let's hit enter here. Continuing will notify BIM management. Whatever, right? You put whatever message you want, anything you want. It's not going to stop them. It's just going to message them and say, look, this is not advised. Please don't do the thing. If you continue, it's going to notify management. All right. So we put in our message. It's your custom messaging. You fully control what you want to say here. Maybe you want to, remind them of some training that you had just done in the lunch and learn and say, hey, remember that training that we just did and how you're supposed to do it this other way and not do the thing that you're about to do? Like, try doing that. You can modify this messaging however you would like. So I can update this, and now this command, whenever this user specifically does something, whenever Sean Zerbis does the mirroring of an object like a lighting fixture, that messaging for plumbing equipment, CAD objects, and lighting fixtures is going to pop this message that just says modifying this category or mirroring this category is not advised. Okay, so now I'm able to do a little bit of very targeted messaging. Now this isn't organization-wide. Again, keep that in mind. Right now, I'm just testing. Does this look the way that I want it to look? Does it trigger in a way that I want it to trigger? Is the user experience for me, for myself, when I'm targeting myself, is this something that I would want to present to an end user with this kind of messaging? You can always customize this, again, all day long. So I'm going to update this rule, and we're going to give this a try. So for this to do something, I'm going to restart my Revit. I'm going to open up Revit 23. Give this thing a second to open up, and we're going to see what happens when I go and try to place and then subsequently mirror a lighting fixture, and then I'll delete the lighting fixture, and we'll see what happens, like what goes on inside the back-end logging with everything that I have set up exactly as it is today, what's about to go down. And of course, Revit in its infinite fun is of course going to open slowly because I'm in a presentation and that's just Revit. So. Now, the trick about this is, for right now, for the way that this is set up, when you change rules, those rules take effect when you restart Revit. It caches those rules right at the beginning so that users don't have these rules coming down all day long and slowing them down in their workflows. So it caches right when you first open up Revit. It also, by the way, when you open a project model, it understands which project that model is associated to, and we're going to dig more into that in our advanced session next time, talking about some advanced project management and advanced messaging for specific project teams. So we'll dig into that later. First here, I'm in a project model. Let me get into something like a floor plan once this finishes up in its load. Come on, Revit, you can run faster than that, right? Again, in webinars, for whatever reason, presenting across things, Revit always seems to be slow there. All right, so I'm in Revit, and I have some things inside of here. If I grab something like a wall and I move this wall someplace, it lets me move it. Now it tells me you can't unjoin elements, doesn't stop anything. This is part of that command, or the organization-wide logging of the move command. So I'm just unjoining the object. Oh, it's probably going to affect a lot of things because there's probably things up in the ceiling area that I just affected as well. That's a good time. Come on, Revit. Should have picked a better wall. All right. Let's place a lighting fixture here. So if I go architecture, nope, let's do systems. Let's do lighting fixture. I don't have any. Let me load something in because I do want to leverage something that I just set up my prevention or my warning command up for. So we'll do CMS here. We're going to load something intentionally into this. But this is an architecture model, so I don't have lighting fixtures in here. Those are typically for me in my electrical model. So I'm going to go ahead and run a pre-save search for MEP electrical objects, specifically lighting We'll come back with some stuff that is electrical lighting. Out of my content collection here. Goodness, the internet is slow, I think. That might be why everything is running slowly here. Okay, so we've got a custom component that is a wall-mounted lighting fixture. That's exactly what I want here. So I'm going to load this into my project, and we're going to drop this wall fixture directly into my project space. Now, as this loads up, as this drops in, this is actually some specialized content. I don't actually have to place this technically on a wall. So I can place this just on a work plane, telling it to be on level 1 and be at some elevation. Now, this is an architectural floor plan, so it probably has its cut plane set at something like 4 feet right now, since I'm not in an RCP. So let me just set this to a 3-foot elevation, and I'm just going to drop this out here into the floor space. So I have a lighting fixture that we can absolutely see without modifying anything else in the project. So I've got this lighting fixture. Now, the whole point of this is that I don't want to have people mirroring lighting fixtures. So if I was to do, say, something like draw a line out here, we'll just draw a line across the middle. I could also have used the middle of that object, apparently. And I want to do the mirror of this. I've selected this object, and I'm going to do a mirror command. So mirror. Let me pick this. It should pop up and warn me. In this case, it didn't warn me. That's fun. I'm able to move it around. I'm able to do all the things I wanted to do. I'll have to go back and double check. Maybe I have signed into the wrong account. That's fun. The point is that we are going to normally get some messaging, which actually in the previous webinar we did actually see. So, all right, let me just move on from that real quick here. Let's talk about developing a plan for what you want to do in your environment with Ally moving forward. So what are we going to be doing here? You want to start, as we mentioned last time, and I mentioned a couple times today, start with some light logging of commands. Light logging of commands in which you've got interest for your firm. If you're MEP or you're electrical and you've got some things about mirroring that you want to control, great, log that type of stuff. If you've got, if you're architecture and maybe you don't like in-place families, log if people are creating in-place families. Start with the logging of those commands that are interesting to you first. And from that, from whatever those commands are, maybe you don't like importing of CAD or exploding of CAD, log it first. And then from the details that you learn from the logging, now what you're going to do is start to develop some kind of targeted user training. So you're going to train your team on the things that you found that they are actively doing. And then once you do that training, you can follow up and do some of what we talked about today with some specific commands. Update commands with some kind of messaging, or make new commands that specifically have some kind of messaging. And that messaging might say, hey, remember the training, maybe don't do those things. That gives you that kind of ability. And then of course, you're going to continue to monitor those logs. And from that, if things start going critical and you start seeing even more issues with this or continued issues with something, then you can turn up the heat a little bit. And for some of these really critical items, you start adding things like passphrases, which we're going to dig into more deeply later in our next session for deeper blocking. And again, we talked about that last time lightly as well. And then for super critical things, you can just block access altogether. You just turn off ability to access a command, and you can target, again, a lot of different things. Target a user, target a group of people. You could target the whole company. I probably wouldn't do that, but that is an option that you have. Now, I talk a lot about logging of information. Running these things, doing these types of logging, or having this messaging pop up is nothing if you don't actually look at the logs themselves. And so we're going to take the last little minute here to go take a look at Ally logging, so you can start to see where this information exists and some options that you have for slicing this information up and viewing it in different ways. The most default place you can go for logging is here in the portal. So there's a lot of things that were logged today while I was working. The move command is the most notable one, the moving of elements, because I was moving things all over the place, mirroring things and doing all kinds of stuff inside the Revit space. So That is all being logged, and when I restarted my Revit, it should have all of that information available. And this is good. Like, you can see dates and timestamps, you can see the user, you can see that it's a command being triggered, and you can see the rule name. This is why rule names are important. You're not just, quote, logging something, you're logging specifically mirror or specifically move so that you're aware of what's going on. Now, this isn't telling you the exact element by ID, it's just telling you that the command was run. That's the whole purpose of this, is to be informed about what commands are being used by category. So if that rule for my particular rule setup there had triggered, that had said logging the or warning against the movement of a particular category, then we would see that rule having been triggered here. But that rule didn't trigger because apparently I'm signed in as the wrong user at this point, and it's not actually linked up to me specifically. So this is some essential logging. You can just start seeing, is this information coming through? And you can search this a little bit, and that's okay. But when you want to really start to dig deeper into things that are more interesting, I am going to recommend that you jump over here to our dashboard, that you go to downloads, and you go get that API sample package for reporting. Just download that. There's an Excel file in there, and there's a Power BI file in there. Power BI is still free for what we're going to be using this on. And you can get the information from the backend system synced up into that Power BI environment. And so once you have that, you can do some more interesting things with this. So I've built myself a little report, and in that little data set is a tab called Ally Logs, and you can do nearly everything that I have here. Of course, you can customize it for your own purposes as well. But you can see in the past year, I've got about 2,300 logs of information that have been triggered in this space. I can see whether or not it was bypassed, meaning they did the thing, or whether it was enforced, meaning there was a message that popped up and they chose not to continue by doing that thing. I can isolate down to specific users that were signed in. I can understand what commands were triggered on which Revit project models. I can see when this was. In this case, again, it's a full year of information, so there's a lot of data inside of here. And I can even filter down to specific commands. Again, you can lay this all out how you'd like to lay this all out. So if I was interested in something like who is doing full explodes of AutoCAD or partial explodes of things that are AutoCAD related, I can choose which of these I want to filter for. I can see what projects this was done in. I can see who did it and when. I can see, again, date and timestamps on this, whether it was enforced or bypassed. Who the users are that are doing full explodes. I can filter down to specific users and understand, oh, this guy was doing this full explode consistently in this particular model, and they did it in this case, well, one time that day. Or let's kind of target down to partial explodes, maybe. Maybe I want to know about partial explodes, 3 times in one day, 1 time in another day, all in the same project model, potentially. And so I can begin to understand where these types of things are taking place, so I can know maybe where I need to do some cleanup. I can know which users perhaps I have to target for training on something very specific. I can know which projects maybe are having some issues. There is a lot that this can give you once you've gone through the exercise of slicing and kind of looking at some of this information in this space. You can also see just a breakdown in my case up here of which commands are the most used. Edit family is done a lot by my team. Delete's done quite a bit. Creating view templates from view is done a high percentage of the time, right? Over here, modifying type definitions is done a lot. And then there's a lot of other little minor things that happen as well. And I can see kind of what they are. I can, oh, hey, where's pin unpinning happening? Are they doing the pin unpin, or is it enforced, right? When was it blocked? When was it bypassed? So I can start to really isolate this down. Where is Sean spending Sean's time in Revit project models? And I can see, exactly the models that these users are spending time in. This is all, and what command types they're running inside of there. So again, a lot of power that's available here for you when you start to dig in and slice this information up, because there is a lot of information to be had very easily. Okay. So there's a lot of data here in the Ally logging. I'm very curious what many of you are looking for in your logs. So if you want some help in kind of customizing that, certainly reach out to us. We're here to help you both in setting up your commands and reviewing some of that information and helping you strategize on how you can move forward with leveraging the Nexus Ally product to become really kind of core to your workflows and core to being informed as to how your users are working. So with that, I'm going to start with a preliminary thank you here. For those of you watching this as a recording on the YouTubes, we hope that this is meaningful for you and you're finding this as valuable kind of a resource for yourself, and that you, of course, subscribe to the channel, like the video. It helps kind of broadcast this out. And we look forward to seeing you in another CTC webinar.